Hello and welcome to another edition of Virginia Wine Notebook and Virginia Wine and Song, the YouTube channel where we pair Virginia wine from a Virginia winery, obviously, with a classic piece of music, or I should say an underrated album. I kind of got off track the last couple of installments of this channel because I was celebrating the passing of Brian Wilson and celebrating blockbuster movies of the 70s and the 80s, and July 4th, Americana. So I kind of went all over the map. So we're going to go back to the basics now. We're just going to do a basic video of a Virginia winery paired with what I think would be a good album to listen to from the classic era of rock and pop, which once again I define as 1964 to 1999. You can argue all day long about what your definition is, but that's my definition. So here we go. We're going to talk about a winery now. Let me just take this is water, by the way, even though this cup says drink wine, pet cat, repeat. I promise you this is just water. Okay, we're going to talk about a winery now that is probably one of the more famous wineries, at least for serious wine drinkers in Virginia, or maybe even in the whole country. This is a winery that's located once again and close to where I live in the Shenandoah Valley. It's actually close to Front Royal. Front Royal, Virginia is easily accessible to many people who live in Northern Virginia, DC, even Maryland. You can just get on 66 and you're in Front Royal. Depending on traffic, it may take you maybe 45 minutes to get to Front Royal from the Northern Virginia area. When I used to live in Herndon, I used to go to this winery quite often as a daycation, so it's doable in one day. Now I live only about a half an hour away from it, so I'm a little spoiled. And it's a beautiful winery. It's called Glen Manor. Very easy to remember. Glen Manor, unpretentious bottle, very simple bottle with their logo on it. This winery and wine maker, he is very, very serious about the wine. Not to the point where they're overly ostentatious. I don't believe that they're pricing themselves outside the market. There are a couple of wineries, I won't name names, but there are a couple of wineries that are along 66 that require reservations, and a tasting is like $75 to $100 and really kind of highbrow. And they have that's the niche they decided to carve for themselves. That's fine. This winery, and also it's kind of like a sister winery, which is Linden Vineyards, which I'll talk about in a second. These are real die-hard Virginia wines, open for everybody. You don't need a reservation. Just call ahead. They do not allow groups. It's relatively small. They have a nice tasting room. They're located right up on a mountain on this little road called Browntown Road. I shouldn't call it a little road, country road called Browntown Road. Which will take you to this little village called Browntown if you go that way. If you're coming from the south, if you're coming from Luray or Waynesboro or Charlottesville or Harrisonburg, you're going to come from the south and go north on 340, and you probably go the Browntown way, which I recommend going because Browntown is a little village. It kind of reminds you of something from the Waltons. They even have like a general store that looks like something right out of the 1930s. So it's a nice little village. I think it's an historic village for the state of Virginia. But if you're coming from Northern Virginia, you're probably not going to be going that way. You'll still be on Browntown Road though, because you have to get to this place on Browntown Road, which is a road that kind of goes up into a mountain a little bit, right on the side of a mountain, and you have to drive maybe about 20 minutes from the main highway, but you get to it and you just can't believe it exists. Even people who are familiar with Virginia wine, who I've talked to through the years, they've never heard of this place. Now the people who are serious, like I said, serious Virginia wine connoisseurs, they definitely know this place. They've won a lot of awards. Like I said, the winemaker cut his teeth making wine for Linden Winery, L-I-N-D-E-N. Linden Winery was one of the first wineries in the state of Virginia. Jim Law, he's considered to be one of the godfathers of Virginia wine. His winery is in Linden, Virginia, which is right off of 66 on the way to Front Royal. That winery has, kind of unusual rules about visitors, so you probably want to check their website if you go to Linden. Glen Manor is a little bit more flexible, probably because they're a little further out. I wouldn't recommend bringing a big group This is not a big group winery. This is not like Rappahannock or some of the other wineries where they, allow really large parties of people, including bachelorette parties or stag parties or whatever the case may be. This is a place that is serious about their wine. And if you go to their website and you look up each of the wines that they have, and currently they have a Sauv Blanc, Petit Manseng, a Vin Blanc, something called Morales Rosé, which is a dry rosé, Vin Rouge, Cab Franc of course, Saint Ruth, which is one of their classic blends they have. I believe it's a blend. But if you go to their website and look at all the different wines that they have to offer, you don't just get a description of the wine. They tell you everything. They tell you they have scientific charts to kind of break things down for you. They tell you where exactly in their vineyard these grapes are coming from. They even have names for each of the areas of their vineyard. They are absolutely serious about what they do there. And you get an education. And like I said, it's not pretentious. You go there no matter who's giving you the tasting. If you go there during the week, like a Friday, that's the day I would recommend going, because you may actually have one of the owners as the person who's giving the tasting. I'm not sure if it's going to be I think his name is Jeff White. Jeff White is the owner, winemaker. He's usually out in the vineyard, so it probably won't be him, but you may get his wife, Kelly. She's wonderful, and she also makes baguettes and bread and stuff that she offers during the tasting. And you go there during the weekend when they're a little more crowded, you probably will have one of their staff. Everybody there knows their stuff, and it will give you an education, and you'll go out, you leave the winery not only having really great wine, but also a real sense of appreciation of what it takes to grow wine in general, not just in Virginia, but in general. And like I said, they'll even break out the map of the winery. If you show interest in their property, they will give you everything you need to know about their property. It's just, like I said, it's a great day. It's a great day out at a winery. Their wines are stellar. I haven't had one bum wine there. They don't have a huge number of wines usually. They focus on a couple of different varietals. This one happens to be something called Petit Rouge, which is no longer on their current list of offerings. This is from 2022, and this is a blend of Cab Sauv, Merlot, Nebbiolo, which is a wine you don't see much of in Virginia, and Petit Verdot. So Petit Verdot is obviously very popular. It's 4% Petit Verdot, 75% Cab Sauv, and it's great to see Cab Sauv do so well. When I first started getting into Virginia wineries back in 2003 or so, you didn't see a lot of Cab Sauv. I think they were trying to figure out how Cab Sauv grows in Virginia. They were trying to experiment with different soils and different elevations and whatnot. And Cab Sauv is really, really popular on the east side of the state, where the soil is kind of loamy and a little more sandy. In Virginia, in the mountains, it's not as popular, but they do Cab Sauv there very successfully, apparently. 5 blocks, 5.4 acres. Like I said, it's all broken down on their website. Very scientific stuff on their website. In fact, I can't turn my monitor around. Unfortunately, it's too big of a monitor. But trust me, just go to Glen Manor's website. Just type in Glen Manor Winery in Google, and you'll see it. Just open up the page that has all their wines listed, and you'll see what I mean. So anyway, and from their wine tasting room, when you go outside, they have a wonderful, breathtaking vistas there. You can actually see Skyline Drive because you're under the mountain, below the mountain where Skyline Drive is. And if you go there in the fall when there are less leaves, well, hopefully there are leaves on the trees in the fall, and they're colorful leaves. We're coming up to fall now. But if you go there in the winter, I'm not really sure if they're open in the winter. They may be. I think they're only closed in January, so I think the rest of the year they're open. So if you go there in February or even March, you probably won't see a lot of leaves on the trees. So you'll probably be able to see cars up on Skyline Drive, and they're way up there. You can't hear them, but you can see them. So it's really, really cool. You got to wonder, the people who are up there who stop and look down, they see the vineyard. It's quite something. All the vineyards are sloping. They're sloping, so they've got natural drainage because the vineyards are sloping up on the hill leading up to the mountain. So Glen Manor, great place to go for a daycation. There are a couple other wineries in the Front Royal area. When you get on 66, you'll probably see exits, a lot of signs for different wineries. So you can maybe do one on your way back home if you live in Northern Virginia. But I would make Glen Manor the centerpiece of your trip if you do go out there, because first of all, you'll be there for a while, because their tastings, they do not rush through their tastings. They are really detail-oriented tasting. So if you want something really quick and you want to drink a lot of wines in rapid succession, you probably want to go somewhere else. This is a place for serious wine people. I don't want to call them snobs, but people who really just want to learn about wine. And I think this is a pretty red wine heavy winery. They do have some whites. Like I said, I think the Sauvignon Blanc is being offered right now, Petit Banseng and Vin Blanc, and they have a rosé, but I think all their others are reds. So definitely check them out by all means. So what goes well with this? Well, to find a wine, an album from the classic rock and pop era that goes well with a wine that is such a joy to have and kind of a real special occasion, I decided to break out one of my very special albums in my collection. And it's actually my favorite album by this particular band. When you think about certain bands from the 60s or the 70s or the 80s or even the 90s, and you got to name your favorite album, sometimes it's a challenge. And this is one of those bands that I really had to think long and hard. And I decided that for the Eagles, I'm going to be talking about the Eagles. And when you're at Glen Manor, if you're lucky, you may see eagles. Yes, they do have eagles flying around up there because their elevation is high enough. You'll definitely see probably some hawks, maybe even a falcon or something, but you may even see an eagle. But anyway, for the Eagles, I didn't pick Hotel California. That's the obvious choice. The album that I picked for the Eagles is this guy. This is Desperado, and this, like I said, I'm bringing out the big guns for this. This particular vinyl. It's a box set, but it's only one album in here. The reason why it's such a large box set is because it's insulated and it's got a lot of packaging in there. It's basically meant, well, if you're a collector, you probably would want to collect this and maybe keep it sealed because this is a limited edition. This is something that Mobile Fidelity, MoFi, which is they do a lot of remasters of CDs and vinyl and even Blu-ray audio stuff. MoFi, a couple of years ago, put out all of the Eagles albums on Ultra Disc, this is a vinyl, and it's called Ultra Disc One Step. And because these are kind of pricey, I would have loved to get a couple of other Eagles albums that I like, but my budget only allowed for one. So I really had to think which one I wanted to have. Like I did with Steely Dan a couple of months ago, I shot a video on Steely Dan and I chose an album for Steely Dan for this particular box set as well. For this I picked Desperado. And this is limited, they had 7,500 pressings. I got number 93. Each pressing is actually numbered. And like I've said before, I'm not really sure if I trust that number when they say limited edition, only 7,500 pressings. I think for the vinyl, they probably will stand by that because vinyl is harder to press, and this is, like I said, there's a lot of perfectionism at work here. They're very quality control oriented when it comes to pressing vinyl. CDs are a little bit less labor intensive, so when they say limited editions of CDs, I'm kind of skeptical about that because sometimes I think they're going to bring some back, even though they say limited. But with vinyl, when they say limited edition, I think they mean it. So I got number 93. I bought this a couple of years ago when this came out. I think this came out in 2002. So it goes well with the 2002 blend of this wine. So Desperado, it's not a very long album. It's actually one of the shortest albums, probably the shortest album the Eagles did. This is only their second album. This album came out after their first debut, which was simply titled The Eagles, or Eagles. Technically speaking, they are just called Eagles, not The Eagles. So this is their second album, and it's a concept record about the American West. And they were even thinking at one time of making a movie loosely based on, the events in the song. If you listen to this album, the lyrics, there's something very cinematic about some of the lyrics in this album. And I believe it really is Glenn Frey's album. I think this was really the brainchild of Glenn Frey and Bernie Leadon. Bernie Leadon was one of the original members of the Eagles, or Eagles. Don Henley, of course, is on here as well, and he sings the title track, which is the most famous song from the album, which was never a single. Believe it or not, the song Desperado was never a single. It's such a great, considered to be one of the Eagles' greatest songs. They never put it out as a single. If they had put it out as a single, it probably would have been a pretty big hit. But they didn't. They did release Tequila Sunrise which was another hit from this album. That was a single. So anyway, concept record, it's a great one. I still have it sealed, mainly because, not because I'm trying to save this for collector's purposes. I simply don't have a turntable I want to play this on. I'd like to get a really good turntable at some point, and when I do, I'll probably break the seal. But for now, it's sealed. But because I wanted to hear what a great job they did with remastering, I decided to get the SACD. The SACD was released actually after the album came out first, and then SACD came out about 6 months later. So this is Desperado, which I did break the seal of because it's a CD, and I just wanted to hear how it sounded, and it sounds just impeccable. All of these remasters are just unbelievable. Sean Berton is one of the Mobile Fidelity engineers behind these remasters. So he's a staple there. There are a couple others over there. Steve Hoffman, I think. I'm not sure if he's at MoFi. I think he's somewhere else. And there are a couple other people. I can't think of their names right now. Rob Laverne, I think his name is. I'm really bad with the names. I should know these guys because they do such a great job with them. But anyway, this is the CD. This is also numbered, by the way. This is offered by Mobile Fidelity. I got number 179 of this. I don't think these are limited editions. These are going to be around for a while. So this is number 179, Desperado. Doolin Dalton is on here, and of course the song Desperado, Outlaw Man. In fact, when Glenn Frey passed away, the first song I thought of was the song Outlaw Man, because it kind of summed up Glenn Frey and what he was all about. And he was a pretty hard partying rocker. He cleaned up his act in the 80s. And he became clean and sober, and he put out a couple of albums that were pretty good in the 80s and the early 90s. But he was in the 70s, he definitely lived the rock and roll lifestyle. So there we go. Desperado by the Eagles and Glenn Manor, a perfect album. I think it's my favorite Eagles album. Everybody's got their own favorite Eagles album, but this is my favorite one. And Glenn Manor, this one has Petite Rouge. So enjoy, have a good afternoon, and a good month, a good summer. It's now August 10th, 2025, so we're getting towards the end of the summer here. So anyway, we'll see you soon.